Welcome to Vox Scream, a Kill Team podcast where we aim to help players of all skill levels supercharge their game and separate the signal from the noise. I'm Mark Meyer, joined by Kill Team heavyweights George Pratt and Joe Gallo. We're coming to you from the Triangle region in North Carolina. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, y'all, welcome back. Another episode of Vox Scream in the books. Good morning, good morning. How's it going, y'all?
Good morning. Doing pretty good. Joe, how's it going?
Great, man. Just, we out here doing podcasting, shouting into the void, as it were, and talking about some Kill Team in the meanwhile.
More like screaming into the box.
He said it. He said the thing.
I'll get it.
So we got a lot of cool stuff lined up today. We got some awesome ITD game recaps, but I think first we were going to spend a little time talking about the World Team Championship coming up this coming weekend after this episode airs. George, you had some interesting insights looking at the team comps and the rosters.
Yeah, so for anyone who's not aware, the World Team Championship is a annual event held in Belgium. And it brings together, it is, like it says, it is teams of 5 players, and from all over the world. It started out with 40K, and as Kill Team grew, it added a Kill Team thing, and last year's was pretty cool, was pretty big. This year's looks to be even better. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 teams. And yes, the United States is represented by some of the best players in the country. So now that I've gone over what the WTC is, I'll go ahead and give you the countries that are representing. So there's a team from Australia, a team from Germany. There are 3 teams from Spain. Spain got to rep their Kill Team bravado. There are 2 teams from France. So I know last week we talked about if there were any Kill Team players from France. Turns out a lot, at least 10. There's an Italian team, a Netherlands team, 2 Polish teams. Poland, apparently a big Kill Team in Poland. 2 UK teams, and 1 US team. And I was actually invited to go to the WTC as like a ringer for some other team, but I was like, no, dude, I'm poor, can't do it, sorry. It was real sad. I wanted to go so bad.
Well, I think that's something maybe we can ask our fine fellows that listen to the podcast to maybe support next year.
Yeah. Once we have, shit worth listening to.
Well, one thing that kind of jumped out at me right away when you sent this over my way was, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I look and only see 1 US team versus like all of these, European teams and then teams even further abroad. Is the US bad at Kill Team?
No, we're just expensive to get flights to the EU, mostly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. As it turns out, so there have been 2 World Championships of Warhammer, which is the World Champs that Games Workshop puts on for Kill Team. And the first year it was won by Orion on his Gellerpox, who is a US player. And the second year, last year, was won by Alexa Pavkovich, who is an Australian player who is on the Australian team for the WTC. So we have at least 1 championship under our belt. So we're pretty good at Kill Team. It's just expensive to get from the US to anywhere else.
Travel can be prohibitive.
Damn you, capitalism!
Yeah. No, this is not a political podcast.
Vote for the four-armed emperor, but I digress.
Yes.
I just wanted to go over the teams because I think that the players picking teams for the overall team is super interesting. And I guess we should probably start with how a team tournament works. So in general, a team tournament, every team of players, whether it be 2 players, 3 players, or in this case, 5 players, has a team captain. And the team captains will come together before the round, and they will do a sort of pairing mini game. So they'll know what maps and missions they will be playing on, and they'll know what the enemy teams are, and then they roll off, and one of them decides to be the first team, and one of them is the second team. And essentially, they will say, one of the teams will say, I've got this team. I'm going to put up Gellerpox. So you give me two of your teams that I will choose to play this Gellerpox player into. And they'll be like, well, Gellerpox is a big horde team, so we'll put out something else like a Gellerpox mirror match, or something with like Brood Brothers, something with a lot of indirect, or something with indirect and other horde, so that they'll say, okay, well, I don't want the Gellerpox mirror match, so I guess Gellerpox into Brood Bros, and we'll see what happens there. And so you do that, and flipping back and forth until all 5 players on a team have been paired off, and they choose. So the Gellerpox player says, okay, great, that's the mission. I'm going to play on Into the Dark because my Hulks are better on Into the Dark than on open board. And so, like, you get to determine what maps, and kind of to a lesser extent, the matchups. And so that is how a team tournament functions. And so, given that context, I think it's super interesting, the teams that have been taken. Because some of them, a lot of the teams are very like, I'm just take a bunch of flex kill teams into this team tournament so that it doesn't really matter what we get matched into. I'll just play kill team. But I know one of the teams, when we get to it, is very matchup dependent, it looks like to my eye.
So just a real quick recap, what you're saying is when they're pairing off, one team captain gets to determine the matchup, like what team they're going to pair up against an opposing team, and then the opposing team in that situation then gets to pick which map they're going to play on.
Yeah, it depends on specifically how that tournament has it set up. Sometimes the first team picks their team, and then their opponent puts up 2, and they select, and the opponent puts the mission and map. Sometimes the first team gets the mission and map. It just depends.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of give and take and some gamesmanship going on there. What were some of the observations you had about these teams?
All right, so I think going down the list is just the easiest, so we don't miss anything. So starting with the Australia team, the Aussies, they've bringing Hearthkin Salvagers, Warp Coven, Void Scarred, Wormblade, and Blooded. And I think this is a fairly balanced like team comp to bring. Salvagers are good anti-elite, Blooded are good anti-elite, and sort of just a good flex horde. Wormblade are a good flex horde. Corsair are great at just, does the mission cost action points? I guess we'll just score points then. And then Warp Coven's a really good flex team. And so to me, this sort of doesn't require the team captain to be like, this requires a perfect matchup. Like, their only thing they have to worry about is getting Warp Coven or Corsair into bad matchups. Or, Warp Coven or Corsair, because, like, Corsair into Scouts. Scouts are great at killing elves. So, like, they kind of want to avoid that matchup, but otherwise they don't really care too much. What do you guys think about this?
So immediately, I think this team is not losing to elites. That's what immediately stood out to me. I mean, all they gotta do is just not put Warp Covenant into elites, and they are literally never losing an elite matchup, assuming that all the skill level of these guys is on par.
Yeah, I think one of the things that jumps out to me is just seeing Corsairs in like a really competitive environment like this. I think it's kind of, to my understanding, it's kind of fallen out of flavor. Obviously, in our local meta, Corsairs are like still a pretty popular team, but just in a larger, like high level competitive setting, it's interesting to see that pop up. And obviously, as a Salvagers enjoyer, I'm happy to see that. And it does feel like a very flexible team in a team tournament kind of setting, very good against elites, as you said, and can hold their own against a lot of hordes now. I mean, that's just, they have like some good strengths on Into the Dark, but I feel like it is, an uphill battle for them on Into the Dark. So that's one thing I would watch out for there.
Yeah. So overall, I think Aussie team is fairly balanced. They don't have a lot of bad matchups, and the few they do have, they should be easily able to navigate around. So moving on to Team Germany. They're taking Novitiates, Mandrakes, Brood Bros, Scouts, and Salvagers again. And this one is also a heavy mid-range team. There's Brood Bros is the only Horde, and Mandrakes is the only Elf. But like Novitiates, Scouts, and Salvagers are both 10 body teams
That
with
love to be
some
within 6
solid
inches of
stuff.
their opponent. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Mandrakes are the only thing they have to watch out for a bad matchup into Scouts, and they want to get their Scouts into every Elf team. Otherwise, like Novitiates, if you can face something that would rather shoot you than fight you, you're gonna be solid. But it's still not terrible. Brood Bros can go into anything. Salvagers are great anti-elite, but they can hold their own in pretty much anything. So this also speaks to me of a fairly balanced, but much more focused on mid-range teams than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. And seeing Hearthkin picked again in this sort of team setting really kind of gets the gears turning about like when you're building a team for a team tournament, just having like that tool in your tool belt to throw against something like elites is really strong.
Yeah. And with enough flex spots who just don't care what they go up against, you should be able to sort of engineer your way into those situations.
Absolutely.
And also, you guys are going to continue to see this trend of Mandrakes, Brood Brothers, Scout Squad. I wonder if we should deal with those.
I mean, they're good. They're strong. So we're going to get into Spanish Team 1, España Primus. They went pretty balanced across the board. They've got Brood Bros and Inquisitorial Agents as the only Horde teams. They've got Mandrakes and Scouts as their Elf and mid-range, and then Phobos, which I believe is the first elite team that we've come across, is in Spain. And I'm not gonna lie, I like Phobos on the team. They're good, like, mission rushers. So loot and secure, they're real good at just scoring a bunch of points real fast and then denying the opponent points. Brood Bros Inquisitorial Agents are just solid Horde teams. They just can flex into anything. I don't know what the roster is for Inquisitorial Agents. I am not allowed to see them, so we don't know what his ancillary support is specifically. Although Ace, this is not Ace playing Inquisitorial Agents, but Ace is one of his teammates, and Ace put up a Goonhammer article saying that if you're playing Inquisitorial Agents, you pick Breachers, and then there is got to be a really strong argument to just not ever choose Breachers all the time, which I don't think Breachers are always an auto pick, but I think they're pretty much a solid choice you can pick into anything. So he'll almost certainly have Breachers at the very least on his roster.
Yeah, I'd assume so.
I'm just scrolling through this, the whole list, and one team that is not on here there is only one person that is taking a team that I think really exploits matchups, and that's Extraction Squad. If I had the ability to have this amount of people on my team, I would highly encourage somebody to have Extraction Squad. They are very, very good into very specific matchups and are extremely uphill for a lot of teams, like randomly good teams.
Yeah, but I want to have that conversation when we get to it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a solid conversation to be had there. Yeah. So for Hispania Primus, I think they have enough flex where they are okay trying to dodge Scouts with Mandrakes and like Salvagers with Phobos and trying to get their Scouts into enemy Elf teams. Overall, I think this is a really solidly balanced team that's going to require a team captain to be more on their game to make sure that they get good matchups.
Yeah, certainly. Because if they get those good matchups, they're just going to be in such a strong position.
Oh, which by the way, George, are you team captain for Nova this year?
Probably. Not if I can help it, but probably. So let's go ahead to Hispania Secundus, which is Phobos, Blooded, another Inquisitorial Agents, Gellerpox, and Brood Bros. So these guys went hard on the Horde teams, and then Phobos thrown in there. which I think is a very strong flex sort of team. They have inquisitorial agents as their sort of match tailor. So like if they can get into like commandos or mandrakes or ravagers, they could pull out the exaction squad ancillaries. Gellerpox are really good into ravagers because ravagers just can't bully Gellerpox. Brood Brothers are just good into everything, blooded, good into elites, but fine into everything else. And then you've got Phobos who are just like, oh, we're playing loot? I'm just gonna score all your points, thanks. So I like the team comp on Secundus. It's gonna require a lot of the Horde players to really play it on their game, to play those teams at a high level for such a long, like for many games in a row. But if they can do it, I think that is probably the most solid team we've seen so far.
As a Horde enjoyer, I really like this team comp. And after this is, the several consecutive European team in a row. And this is really interesting for me as somebody who's not disconnected, but doesn't really follow the larger sort of global competitive community for Kill Team. And so I've heard all these things about, Phobos being big in Spain. I've heard all these things about inquisitorial agents being really big in Spain. And so to finally see it is very interesting to me, to sort of get these inklings of what the meta is like in these other sort of Kill Team powerhouse countries.
Yeah, it's interesting because inquisitorial agents isn't super big here in the US.
Not at all.
I think the only player who plays them is Joe in our local meta. And even then, you generally put them down because they require a lot of brain power to run, and over even a 3-round tournament that can just like wipe you.
Yeah, I'll be honest. They're still in the back of my mind because I even like I'm trying to think of any American players that are like at the top tier that play them right now, and the only one I can think of is Adrian, but he's on Mandrakes right now.
Yeah. So, and then to round out the last Spanish team, España Tercius, they also have Phobos. So every Spanish team has a Phobos player, which I think is super interesting. They really want to get that Phobos onto any loot boards. I'm not sure if the maps are mission dependent or if everyone plays the same mission no matter what map they're on. But I think the Phobos on loot is sort of like, I don't care what you have. I'm just going to take your points out from under you. And so Phobos is a really good like tech pick for the missions specifically. But otherwise, they've got Scouts, Brood Bros, Warp Coven, Commandos, and Phobos, which is another like solid mid-range backbone team. Brood Bros for your Horde, Phobos as your mission rusher and elites, and then Scouts for anti-elf, Commandos just sort of flex, Warp Coven just sort of flex.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Phobos in general, like even outside of a team setting, I mean, you're amazing at 2 out of the 3 missions, right? And then all you got to worry about is just not getting like a super big horde on capture. And if you do that, you're probably going to have a pretty good tournament run with Phobos.
Yeah, I agree. So then we get to the first of the French teams. I gotta admit, I love this name, French Fries.
Those are freedom fries, damn it!
They're reappropriating it.
I know, they're taking it back.
So they've got Phobos, Pathfinders, Brood Bros, Novitiates, and Scouts.
That's just solid. That's just solid.
Yeah, this is a solid, interesting team comp. Like I've been going on about, Phobos are mission rushers. They're good at rushing the mission. They're good at scoring loot. They're solid at scoring secure. Then you've got Pathfinders who just like in the right hands sort of blow away any team. They did recently just get a bit of a nerf. They're not as fast as they used to be, but I don't think that matters too much. I think they're still a solid team. Brood Bros flex into anything you want. Novitiates, as long as you're not playing Ravagers, they should be fine. And then Scout Squad is good anti-elf. So like I think this team is really solid. They're not really worried about bad matchups too much. Again, this is going to be another like, can mid-ranges take on hordes. Like novitiates have got the 2 flamers with a bunch of range on them. Pathfinders are good into hordes because they're all 4/5 Markolites forever. So yeah, I think this is going to be a solid balanced team.
It's interesting to me that this is the first Pathfinders team on the list because even after the nerfs, it's still sort of generally thought about around here as one of the best teams.
It is.
I think yeah.
They're hard. That's really what it is. It's the Inquisitorial Agents thing. They're a very hard team to play because if you get into melee, you're just gonna fold.
Yeah, you need to set up your marker lights so well in order to make the team work. And if you don't have the marker lights set up down, then the team just kind of folds. So yeah, it's a tough team to play, but when you play them well, they're very strong. And what's interesting is that this is the only Pathfinders player in the entire tournament.
It was kind of lost on me how bad the Pathfinders are in melee until I flew one of my bugs in as Gellerpox and killed one with just a bug at full health.
3 wounds, let's go. Just punch him. Oh, I won.
Oh no.
Yeah, and my Zangors routinely fail to deal any damage to Pathfinders because they actually just suck.
George, remind me because the thoughts are matriculating in my head. When did we get the balanced data slate that nerfed Colts and Fel War right before Nova? Do you remember?
Not a clue. Not a chance.
Okay, because it did happen right before Nova, if I remember correctly, right?
I have no idea. Couldn't tell you.
Let me do some Googling because I have thoughts if that's the case.
So while you do that, let's move on to the second French team, T1 or Bi. They have Gellerpox, Corsairs, Wormblade, Blooded, Brood Bros. So they have 4 Horde teams and an Elf team, which is super interesting. They basically swapped out Phobos for Corsairs as their mission rusher, which is, I think, it's a different way of doing the same thing. I don't think one is better than the other. It's just sort of sideways from the other.
Yeah, I think it's just more of a playstyle preference. I mean, I think that you could probably say that the Phobos are maybe a little bit more flexible just in terms of like their tools and such. But I think you look at the Corsairs and they just have a lot more, I don't want to say like power in individual units, but it does feel like, it's a closer thing to a Horde version of a mission rusher if we're looking at that versus Phobos, right?
Yeah, I agree. They're just as fast. They hit kind of just as hard in shooting. They hit much harder in melee, but they're much more fragile. So yeah, I think it's a side grade, right?
Yeah, I mean, whereas your Phobos are going to be, a little bit more sturdy. You look at the Corsairs, and maybe they can get turn 1 deep strike into like an inquisitorial agent backline or something like that.
That's true. You can basically guarantee a plasma grenade in deployment zone with Corsairs off a scout dash, just with the flying dude.
Yeah, maybe inquisitorial agents isn't the best example there, just because they can, absolute authority it. So you need that extra movement probably from
I don't think absolute authority works on scout dashes.
No, it doesn't.
No, but yeah. I think in some boards you're going to need that extra dash from plunderers.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I think in some yes.
It would depend on the board.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
It would depend on the board for me because usually I'm going to be targeting their movement because they usually only really use at the first turning point. But anyway, to answer the question from earlier, it was August 8th of last year they did the balanced data slate.
So yeah, just before Nova.
Yep. So I would be very ready, depending on how the results of these next 2 big tournaments, for another data slate to slap down Scouts, Brood Brothers, and Mandrakes.
That would be pretty surprising because I think the general consensus is that, the last data slate was sort of just that, the last data slate before the new edition.
I don't know, because if it ends up being, because let's put it this way. We have 10, how many teams is it? You said 13, George?
In the team tournament, 14, I think.
Yeah, 10 out of the 14 teams have Brood Brothers on them. I think 8 or 9 of the teams have Scouts on them, and Mandrakes are roughly the same. That does not indicate health to me. That indicates something is very wrong, and unless they want Nova to look like that too, because it's going to, they would need to do something previous to Nova, which we'll see if that happens. But to me, that's a little not good.
Man, I hope they don't touch Brood Bros because I've been really practicing them, and that would suck.
Well, if you remember, if I remember correctly, were you not practicing Colt or Felgor right before Nova this happened?
No,
Were you on Vetguard?
I was on Vetguard.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was on Felgor. That's what it was. Okay, because I had just gotten second place at ATC. I was feeling real great about my life.
And then they nerfed Felgor. Yep. And then you were like, you were in a downward spiral. I thought we would have to talk you off a cliff.
I was like, fuck. Just like,
I remember. Yep, I remember that.
it's just it is.
Felgar were just a thing for you, man. You had like some really great success, and then you know the nerf happened, and then I remember before the Triangle Open, you were going to play Felgor, and then you just like backed off of that at the last minute too.
Yeah, I'm glad I did that ultimately because the way the boards were set up were conducive. Yeah.
They were fine.
I
As the TO who was playing Felgor at the time, I would have played Felgor on all of those boards.
Well, either way, now Felgor have got nerfed even more, so it is. And
yeah, I still think they're really good.
yeah, I think
I'd say so.
I think they are too. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit of a how you say poussé when it comes to playing them, and I just felt Inquisitorial was a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I think you and everyone else, when Felgor got nerfed, was relying too heavily on their frenzy ability, which, to be fair, was so busted that was the best way to play them. So, I don't think that was weird or wrong of you to feel the way you were, given the way you were playing them, which was optimally.
Thank you, George. That makes me feel so much better.
George, you want to tell me a little something about the Italian fried chickens?
Yeah, it's a great name, is what it is.
Yeah.
So they're taking Blooded, Kinband, Scouts, Wormblade, and Nemesis Claw. So the first non-Phobos elite and the only Farstalker team. So they've got 3 hordes, mid-range, and Nemesis Claw as anti-elite, who can sort of flex into mid-range. They still kind of struggle into hordes, but, you know, if you play it well, it's still good. But what's interesting is the Kinband here, because what I think they're doing is they're taking Kinband as their mission rusher, as opposed to Corsairs or Phobos. I think that's why they have them there, because Kinband, on paper, are really good at just scoring points. They're kind of to bad at killing things, especially in power armor. But like they'll mess up a horde team, no problem, and they'll just score a bunch of points. So I think that's what they took Farstalker for.
Well, I think I have my response.
Okay.
There you go. Anyways, yeah, no, taking Farstalkers into any tournament is wild to me, and taking them into as big a tournament as WTC is a bold move, to put it mildly.
Well, they won a large tournament in Texas.
Sure. I mean, anybody. What is it? A broken clock strikes twice right a day, or something like that. Either way, it's gonna happen.
You have to be a very good player to win a large tournament with any team. So it's not a thing that you can just luck into. If you're winning a large tournament, then 2 things have to happen. 1, you have to be a good player, and 2, you need to be playing a team that can win a large tournament. Because unfortunately, not all teams can.
Well, I would immediately question the size of the tournament, because if it's 8 dudes in their backyard.
No, I think it was a Lone Star Open. It was like 40 players.
Oh, shit.
It was a big tournament. Yeah, it was a big tournament, and he won the tournament with Farstalker. And apparently, he'd been just going around Texas being like, yeah, I'm the Kinband player who wins. You know?
All right, we appreciate it, Chad. We do.
Yeah, so I think, on paper, I've always thought Kinband can compete. They shouldn't be a bad team. I just don't think they play the same game as everyone else.
It could also be, yeah, to that point. I mean, we think about it, they're not great, but I think we think about that specifically in the context of the US meta, which is a lot more focused on killing, maybe. Whereas, like, if this is truly, like, you know, a points rush kind of team, you know, you're going to get 4 on primary, you're going to bounce the books and just max secondaries early, like thinking about it in that sense, like it could be really good in the tournament setting.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So I like their team comp. I think they're solid. They've got Nemesis Claw for anti-elite, Scouts for anti-elf, and then sort of like everyone else flexes. So they don't really have too many unfavorable matchups. Then we have the Netherlands team, the Tulip Titans. That's what they're known for. Yeah.
Love it.
They've got Nemesis Claw, Brood Bros, Scouts, Commandos, and Gellerpox. So this is another 3 hordes mid-range elite. They have very similar to just about everyone else. Commandos, good mid-range flex. Gellerpox and Brood Bros, good horde flex. Scout is mid-range anti-elf, otherwise flex. And Nemesis Claw is great anti-elite, and then can fight into mid-ranges.
I think the thing
so
that
like-
jumps out about this team comp to me is that it's almost exclusively melee. Like it feels very, very melee heavy compared to all of the teams we've seen previously.
Yeah, that's right. Brood Bros they can flex into melee. They have good, decent melee ops, but they are a shooting team. They're
Right.
a vet guard shooty team. But yeah, you're right. They are very melee.
Yeah, and I mean, you can also, I guess, make the argument about commandos and how good their shooting can be, but also it's, I don't think anybody's thought of commandos as anything other than a melee horde.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the commandos like Brood Bros. Commandos have a couple of shooty dudes who are good at shooting. Like Brood Bros have a couple of melee dudes who are decent at melee. But yeah, I think commandos are generally considered a melee mid-range. Yeah. Yeah,
When you
that's
look at this,
interesting.
you've talked a lot about like the points rushers as a really staple part of a lot of these team tournament compositions. Do you see anything like that here? Because I don't see anything that jumps out to me like that. I guess maybe commandos, because you can shush up and then go for it too.
Yeah, they're much more of a board control team. So like they'll rush a point insofar as that allows them to project threat into places they want to project threat onto.
Right.
But like I've played against commandos. I played Liam at last year's ATC, not the last one that just happened, the one before that. Exaction into commandos, and he played real cagey. He played real far back. I gassed everything on turn 2 when he was too far back. So I ran out of CP and got demolished with my exaction squad. So you can play commandos much more cagey into a less good matchup, and they're still really strong because they are all about just commanding the board with their melee and shooting threats, and they're really good at it. So yeah, I don't see any mission rushers. I just see good teams that can play the game well.
At the end of the day, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, true. Then on to the first of 2 Polish teams, Polish Squig Raiders. They've got Corsairs, Nemclaw, Commandos, Wormblade, and Legionary. The only team with 2 elites, and we've just Legionary. I don't know what marks they're taking because I can't check their roster, but I like the Corsair on there for mission rushing, Nemesis Claw for anti-elites. You have Commandos and Wormblade as flex spots, and then Legionary are actually really good into elites and mid-range teams. So I think that's another solid flex. They can also sort of shut down a bunch of the mission rusher teams as well. With either Korn or Nurgle, they can just sort of push up the board, get into melee, beat up a bunch of elves or Kroot, and just sort of ping-pong their way through a team. So I kind of like Legionary, and then Tzeentch and Slaanesh are really good anti-elites. So I think Legionary still have what it takes to play the game and play it well. I just think that people are so down on their ability to be out-activated, they don't also see the advantage that elites can get to their game plan faster than horde teams can, because they have less operatives and their operatives can do more things at once. So if you set up your game plan on turn 1, you can execute a good game plan on turn 2 with less setup than horde teams or even some mid-range teams.
Yeah, so as the other resident Legionary player here, I agree with all of that. The problem is then they give an APL to the multi-gunner and then blow your guy off the board. That's
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. As long as you kill 2 or 3 other dudes with him, that's a good trade, whatever.
I mean, but it's near impossible with some of these teams, especially with like Brood Brothers, especially because they're literally can just send an idiot, like send one of their psychic familiars 2 inches in front of you, and then just take you off the board with a plasma because they've already set it up to where they have multiple rerolls on you. And if you lose a legionnaire, more than one legionnaire first and second turning point, you're not winning that game. Just straight up.
100%. Don't lose your legionary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you can guarantee, like, you're going to have to do the thing that a lot of elites are going to have to do in this meta, which is, probably go down 4-2 in the first turning point and then fight back up. But if you're in a position to where you can sort of make those big plays on turn 2, like George is saying, it's, that's part of the game plan, right? Is, you might start from a little behind, but you're going to power through in turns 2 and 3, just kill a bunch of dudes and score a bunch of points.
It's certainly possible in Into the Dark. I agree with that because you don't have to worry about getting shot turning point 1 and you can play very safe. But you just can't do that on open, in my opinion. And since that's literally the other half of the game, I think taking an elite team into a high-level tournament setting is going to be a very uphill battle for most people.
I took Legionary into Kill Team Open 2, where there was the height of Elites Are Dead. I don't know. I did pretty well. I only lost to 2nd and 3rd place. So, like, I think they're fine. I think you can do it. You have to play extremely well, yes. But they allow you to do things that Horde teams can't. And I think that if you play the game like you're playing a Horde team, you're going to lose as an elite team.
I think they have
to play the game like an elite team.
I think there's 2 primary things that also need to not happen because particularly with elite teams, they don't have rerolls. Your rolls have to not shit the bed, so you can play as good as humanly possible. And if your rolls are just not there, you're going to lose. Now, bear in mind, I think that applies to most other teams, but I will say most other teams at the top of the brackets right now have very good, reliable rerolls. Scouts basically just don't miss shots because of the amount of rerolls they have, for example.
Yeah, Scouts, Wormblade, Brood Bros, they've all got good, solid rerolls.
And then 2, the other thing that's completely out of your control is the activation game. There's literally nothing you can do about it. Even if I roll max on Prussian tokens with Nemesis Claw, I'm going to get out activated and a good player will just wait you out. And
sure,
there's just
that's when you know that's going to happen, so play into it. Don't be aggressive on turn 1. Stage on turn 1. If your opponent's getting aggressive, then you can use that to your advantage. If your opponent's playing really cagey, you can use that to your advantage. So you have to know that you're going to get out activated, and you have to play with that knowledge. You have to know, in Kill Team, you can always measure anything at any point. So measure movement ranges, measure charge ranges, know where you need to be in order to do the things you need to do, or be safe in case you can't do the things you want. And I think that's what you need to do as an elite team. And since you're playing far less bodies than Horde and mid-range teams, you've got the time to do it. So I don't think elite teams are out so much as they are harder to play. I'm not going to deny that. It's just you need to spend more time positioning and looking forward.
I also think it's important to think about this in the context of the terrain. Like, we know that they're going to be using the WTC terrain. It's specifically made for this tournament, and there's a lot of heavy, lots of ways to block line of sight. I think that when you kind of factor those things in, it's not just like playing on Octarius, where if you don't have if you're not playing on like some of these TPT boards where it's just a lot of heavy in the middle, yeah, you can get shot off the board, but if there's a lot of heavy kind of strewn around, there's places to hide, there's places to stage.
Yeah. I like the WTC terrain. I bought a set. Mark, yeah, you bought a set with me. It's really quite nice. And then in Into the Dark, elites are they can do things that most of their teams can't with their 3 APL. So I think elites are fine in this meta. Especially in a team tournament, I think you can do a lot with having a legionary on your team to like go into Ravagers or Commandos or like Breachers even. I think they can be fine into Breachers, assuming you don't get, blitzed, grenaded.
I'm much higher on elite teams and team tournaments. In fact, I would encourage people to have at least one elite team on your team in a team tournament because you're able to mitigate everything I just said.
Yeah, because you can engineer the matchups. So
Yeah, and at
so
the end of the day, you look at it. I think my last point on this is just if you have a elite team and you're maybe like, you look at some of these earlier teams and you've got like the salvagers, and maybe they're throwing the salvagers into your elites. That's fine. You've got 4 other games, and maybe those matchups might go a little bit more in your favor because they've sacrificed a slot effectively to deal with elites.
yeah, yeah. And as long as you lose less badly, and elites are pretty good at losing not badly if they're gonna lose. So like that helps for secondaries and stuff.
Makes sense to me. Team Poland.
Playmakers. Team Poland, the second Polish team, they've got Commandos, Jaegers, Broodbros, Hunterclade, and Ravagers. The first Jaegers and first Ravagers on this list. I think the first Hunterclade too. Am I crazy? I think the first Hunterclade too.
They are.
So I like this team. It's 4 mid-range flex teams and Brood Bros, right? Like, Ravagers, don't go into Gellerpox, try not to do a mirror match. It'll be fine. Hunterclade can play into pretty much anything that, like, isn't Commandos, and even then, they can probably still fight Commandos, because Commandos don't have a lot of rerolls, and so with Vanguard support, making them injured, they can, your Sicarians can sort of blender them with power weapons. So I think this is just a solid, like, yeah, we've got 5 dudes, we've not a lot of bad matchups, whatever you match into us, we'll play.
Yeah, I think it's a really solid team comp, and I like it because it feels fresh compared to the other ones. I mean, as Jaegers are like a newer team, it's less obvious to me like where their place is on the team compared to like Brood Brothers, where it's just they're obviously like a good flex horde. But I really like the pick there as well.
Yeah. Joe was playing Jaegers for a bit. He absolutely demolished my Mandrakes on Beta Decima. It was interesting. I really liked the way Joe played the Jaegers. I think they're pretty solid.
Oh, I love the Jaegers, man. Let's put it this way: if scouts weren't like just so good right now, and I also just didn't like Space Marines more, I'd probably be playing Jaegers. In fact, actually, if scouts were themed in any other way that were not exactly Space Marines, I would be 100% playing Jaegers right now.
Yeah, I like Jaegers. I think they're cool. So the first of the 2 British teams, the UK teams, I'm sorry, not British, UK. We have Team Dragon, which is Exaction Squad, Brood Bros, Commandos, Mandrakes, and Inquisitorial Agents. So we have our only Exaction Squad, as we were alluding to before. So it's 3 hordes, a mid-range, and Mandrakes are great mission rushers who are also kind of just mid-rangey power. The team I was talking about that needed their team captain to be on point was Polish Squig Raiders. We kind of just glossed over it with all the elite matchups, but like Corsair, Voidscar, Nemclaw, and Legionary sort of need to go into the right matchups in order to do the best, and then their only flex is Commandos and Wormblade. So like I think their team captain's gonna have to work the hardest of anyone here. But back on to Team Dragon, I like this team comp because you have Exaction, who's like just a tech choice into Gellerpox, Mandrakes, and Ravagers, and Commandos. Teams that just want to hide in melee, they can't do that. And with the recent buffs, I've been wanting to go back to Exaction Squad. I do this every time Exaction Squad gets buffed. I want to go back to them and play them. I play like 3 games, and I remember that I am terrible at Exaction Squad. They do not play the game the way that I want to play the game, and I am incapable of change, apparently.
I mean, I think playstyle is an important thing. We've kind of danced around the idea of talking about how like the neutral game and kill team can be compared to like fighting games. And I think we'll save that conversation for another episode. But I think like a player's playstyle is kind of the core of that.
Yeah, I agree. And Exaction are like Commandos. They're very board control heavy, and they've got a lot of abilities and ploys to make their shotguns They can remove cover out to 4 inches instead of 2, which absolutely messes with Gellerpox and Into the Dark, or melee teams in general who want to stage up. They get rerolls out in that 4 inches, hitting on 3s with 4/4 shotguns. And then their melee pieces are charge pass melee pieces. They always fight first, so you don't ever need to initiate a fight. You just want to lock people down. And so they're very, very good at controlling the board and moving up intentionally, but not aggressively. And I am bad at that. I'm terrible at that. I move up so aggressively, so much, I can't play Exaction Squad because I want to hit the gas on turn 2, and they are not a hit the gas on turn 2 team. They're a survive turn 2, hit the gas turn 3, win the board, finish the game kind of kill team. I'm bad at it. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, honestly, I'm of the opinion that they are the most underrated team in the game right now. Because I mean, the 5 teams you mentioned that they're good into are the 5 top teams in the meta that are not exactly Brood Brothers, and I think they actually have a good matchup into Brood Brothers as well.
I do too, with Weber, some grenades and stuff. I think they're pretty solid. It's just, again, their playstyle is so very different from other teams that it's hard to pick them up and play with them well because they don't. If you do what you would do on a Brood Bros on Exaction Squad, you're gonna lose.
Exactly.
But otherwise, I like Team Dragon. I think their only matchup that is like hard for them is Exaction Squad. If they get matched up into elites, that's gonna be really tough. If they get matched up into one of their good teams, it's gonna be pretty easy. And then if they get matched up into a flex team, it's a toss up, but they're probably not on the winning end of that matchup. And then Mandrakes just don't get matched. If Elf team, avoid Scouts is pretty much how that goes. And Commandos and Ravagers. And the second UK team, Team Saint, they've got Salvagers, Brood Bros, Mandrakes, Hunterclade, Commandos. Our second Hunterclade team. This is 3 mid-range, Elf, and Horde. Pretty standard. Salvagers, anti-elite. Mandrakes are your Elf mission rushers. And then 3 teams for flexing. Just are you putting up Scouts? Well, I'll not put up Mandrakes and not Salvagers. Play something else. Yeah, I don't care what.
Yeah, seems pretty solid and well-rounded.
Yep. And then we have Team USA. USA! They're bringing Mandrakes, Brood Bros, Wormblades, Scouts, and Compendium, which I think is Demons. I'm not sure. I can't look at the roster, but I think they're bringing Demons. And if assuming they're bringing Demons, we've got 3 Horde teams, mid-range and Scout, and then your Elf Rusher on Mandrakes, your Mission Rusher. And I think that's a really solid team. Scouts are your anti-Elf, but otherwise they're flexible enough. Brood Bros, Wormblade, and Demons can flex into anything. In fact, Demons are great anti-elite as well. And then Mandrakes can flex into anything, but like stay away from Scouts, stay away from Ravagers. It's an Elf team. Stay away from the things that just eat Elf teams, right? And even still, it's Adrian's Mandrakes, and Adrian won World Champ Golden Ticket off Commandos. If Adrian had to play in Commandos, I think he could do it as Mandrakes, even though it's an uphill battle.
I'm so interested to see what this companion team actually is. Like, what else do you think it could be? Do you think it could be like High Fleet?
Yeah, the only ones that I could think of are High Fleet. High Fleet is really good. Talons is really good if you can engineer always into the dark. And then Demons are really good. Demons made their way to the World Champs last year. Sauer, player from Latin America, from South America, he got into the World Champs. He got his golden ticket off of Demons and played with Demons in the World Champs. So they've got the tools.
I like it too because even if it's like a semi-bad matchup, you've got the roster flexibility to kind of figure it out.
So it's interesting. It's the only compendium team coming from the U.S. because apparently that we've got the cojones to make that work. But yeah, I like I like looking at what people are taking into a team tournament because I want to find out. Obviously, all these teams are good. They wouldn't take them if they weren't competitive. But what was the plan for all these teams? And I think you can really sort to see what's going on where people take scouts, ravagers, commandos as anti-elf, and then elf teams for mission rushing or Phobos for mission rushing. You've got to have an anti-elite in there somewhere, so salvagers, nemesis claw, other legionary even, and then you've got to have plenty of just like I don't care what you're playing. I've got Gellerpox, novitiates, brood pros, vet guard, Wormblade, Blooded. Those are the teams that I don't care what you're playing. I'll play Kill Team with you.
Do you have any thoughts just generally on team tournaments and team tournament composition, Joe? Especially in the context of you and I playing together in the team tournament at Nova.
I really enjoy the team tournament format in general. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it adds like an extra dynamic to the game that's not there normally. It allows teams that don't normally compete in single format to actually compete and have fun. And I love being captain and doing those advanced calculations of like what's better per matchup. It's what I'm specialized in. It's why George usually defaults to me when we're teammates. And the thought just occurred to me too. We can just call our team Vox Scream.
We can just call our team Vox Scream.
I can't wait to play you guys at the team tournament.
I remember like Scott was talking so much smack last year about the team tournament because he got matched up against you guys in like the first round of the team tournament. He's like, I didn't come here to play these guys. I play them all the time.
Yep.
Well, that was an awesome discussion. A lot of really great insight. We spent a ton of time talking about that. Do you guys want to do like just a real quick hitter, like lightning round discussion of our league games from this past week?
Yeah, let's do it quick.
Yeah, so I'll go. I played Eddie. Eddie was playing Mandrakes. Eddie is a very good player. He has not played into Scouts yet, and he discovered, wow, 10 wounds is a lot of wounds to deal with. However, I will say several things that were mildly annoying in this game. The gloaming shroud for Mandrakes is really stupid and annoying. The fact that they have the Felgor thing where they just retain a dice so long as they're in shadow against every shooting attack makes them unfathomably more tanky, especially when he kept rolling 5s and 6 on his saves, and I was getting exactly 4 damage through on 2 shotgun shots where I was hitting every single hit. So that was very frustrating. But I ended up rounding out towards the end when he charged my courier target and he rolled a bunch of 2s and 1s, and I killed him. So, or no,
Yeah, elf stuff.
or I got him onto 1 health because Space Marine fists, man, they're 3/4. I got a crit and a hit, or 2 normals and a crit, so I did 7 damage to him exactly. Tapped him with another guy. He forgot a few things during his match too, of like when to use Slink into Darkness on his leader and stuff like that. But other than that, I just set up my game plan. I basically fought really hard on one side of the board, and that seemed to work out pretty well. Man, just their teleportability is just super annoying, and I don't like it. It's not
It's
fun.
so good.
It's not. I don't. There's no counterplay to it. That's what
No,
annoys me.
Mandrakes are the team of no counterplay. That's their gimmick. They're not fun to play against.
Like I mean, when I literally killed 90% of his team, he just scored 3 points at the very end for doing nothing other than being next to a wall, and that's not fun, especially in a game where positioning is so important. Positioning just matters zero to them. Just be next to heavy and score 3 points is like, I mean, we talked a lot about, the team tournament. That's why a lot of people are taking Mandrakes. They're just really good at doing the mission. They all have fucking power swords or some variety of power sword for some reason. They have a lot of really stupid gimmicks of like, oh, you can't activate within 6 inches of me if I'm based on a 3-up, and like a bunch of stuff that just makes it not fun and super frustrating to play against, especially like I said, when you're hitting them with 2 like shotguns that hits on 2s that should be in theory shredding them and then saving all your saves. But like I said, I set up the sniper to remove obscuring down a hallway. That worked out pretty well. Pretty much locked down that hallway. And I just kind of stayed on my points, my home points, and fought for those. Took advantage of point to get stolen. Yeah, that was the funny thing too. This actually happened multiple times during the game. Multiple times Eddie would charge my guys he would not roll the exact dice he needed, and he would just lose the fight. And to be fair, I kept saying, I'm like, all right, you want to charge the guy with the 4-6 knife? I get you got 4-6 lethal 5, but like, even with a reroll, there's a good chance this isn't gonna go your way. Because I get rerolls too. So okay. And 3 or 4 times he did it 4 times. 2 out of 4 times it didn't go his way, and both times it scored me points. I stole his home point from the first time, and I got both my points of courier from the second time. I will say, had he not rolled so many saves, I would have maxed out on tac ops. I only missed 1 point on the scout faction tac op to boop the button, and then if the guy who booped the button survived toward the end, you get the point. And yeah, they can just Mandrake. Oh yeah. One last thing, the fact they can turn like guys that save up on four up into 5-ups effectively with saving on 1s and 2s is just, it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. It takes teams that are literally designed around saving on a certain save, just getting shredded by attacks they should not be getting shredded by. And it
Like
does.
salvagers who save on a 3-up.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's their whole thing. Like you just turn them into Jaegers that are slower. Like that's and
Worse.
worse,
Go from a 3-up to a 5-up save.
right? Because they're APLs. Yeah, because they're APLs too. And yeah, like the more than any other team, Mandrakes do not play by the fundamental rules of Kill Team. And I really, really hope they get changed before Nova, because they're going to be everywhere and it's going to be annoying. But that says nothing about my opponent. Eddie, I love playing Eddie. Eddie's Eddie's gonna be on my team for Nova. It's just I'm very frustrated with Mandrakes, how they were designed. They were not designed well, in my opinion.
Yeah. My league game, and I think we skipped it, but we played Secure on DUCT, which is the ITD map number 10. I played Brood Bros into Trevor's Phobos strike team, and it was a very difficult game because Phobos are so fast and doors don't really, like, they don't care about doors. So I had to play very, very cagey outside of 2 inches, make sure that I could project threat from behind doors so he couldn't open doors freely, but also stay far enough away where if he did open a door, I wouldn't just get annihilated. So it was a very, very tough game positioning wise that I was able to sort of project enough threat and then move some dudes up into my threat bubbles to score points. And I was just able to stay up on primaries for the entire game. I won it. The score was pretty convincing. It just doesn't tell the right tale because that game was really hard. Trevor's a really, really good player, and he just, in turn 1, he positioned such a way where I won initiative and gave him initiative because I couldn't do anything at the top of turn 2. So like, it was an excellent game. He's an incredible player. And I was just able to leverage like my Patriarch behind doors and melt-a-guns and stuff to sort of project threat and just like push him back a little bit, or if he went and got aggressive, I could punish him for being aggressive. And that was my game plan, and I was able to make it work.
Was there any sort of like fun play of the game?
I mean, my Patriarch went up the side of the board and just ate a bunch of Phobos on one side, and then my veteran took a track target shot, a guard shot for the Patriarch. So that was probably like the play of the game. Again, not a lot really happened. It was positioning. It was all just positioning, like, this is my threat range, this is your threat range, this is what I'm going to do if you do this is what you're going to do if I do this. And so, like, it was just, the game was in our head like that fight scene in the Jet Li movie, I think it's Fearless, where, like, the 2 dudes fight in the rain, but only in their head. I don't know if you saw that. It's a great scene. It's a great movie.
Yeah, that sounds really dope. I haven't seen that.
Oh, I should mention I did win my game 19-14. I didn't mention that.
So my game, I played against Nick Shepard and his Vet Guard on Into the Dark, like we just talked about. It was a fantastic game. Nick's an excellent player. He's only won two of the last three major tournaments we've had here in the Triangle, so you could say he's pretty good. I ended up winning that game, and it was a very interesting game to me just because I played so much Vet Guard last year. I played Vet Guard and Commandos almost exclusively in the 2023 calendar year, just because I started with the starter set box and I had those teams, and I love them both. But I was very much just attuned to the sort of Vet Guard game plan on that particular map, where they're going to take move in the first turning point. They're going to move up and really contest or just take that room that's kind of closer to my deployment zone, that really narrow room on what would be the left hand side for me. And so I was very just like in touch with that. And so I stacked a lot of dudes up on that side of the board to be able to, if not capture or rather secure that objective, to be able to just sort of contest it so that he's not going to score stand fast on the first turn. And that was really like the big sort of thing on the first turn, was just sort of playing chicken around that room. He did give me the first activation, so I was able to move immediately into that room with some mutants. I wasn't able to secure it right away, but I was able to get my glitchling in there and secure it quickly next. I managed to dodge a lot of bullets just in terms of like, I think he rolled particularly badly. He rolled a lot of twos, so take aim didn't really help him out very much. And that's a sad thing as a Vet Guard player to roll a lot of twos, I gotta say. So at the top of the second turning point, he blasted a big chunk of dudes in that same room where we were kind of piled up, and dealt a total of 6 wounds, didn't kill any operatives. Volgar then came up and then flamered his grenade launcher, but In Death Atonement saved the grenade launcher. He then blasted that same pack of dudes with a grenade launcher and rolled a bunch of twos. And ultimately, that was a big play that just didn't go in his favor. And if it did, it might have been a very different outcome. But I think part of it, I was just so in tune to what Vet Guard can do on that map. I think two things that might have really swung the game out of my favor was Nick made a bit of a misplay where his demo guy was just a non-factor the entire game. He was deployed to go into that sort of big room in the center. To me, I think in those ITD maps where there's those really narrow corridor rooms on the side, you just really, really want to be playing like your demo guy in one of those rooms to just kill everybody in one of those rooms.
Oh yeah, that's where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a misplay. The other thing too is if it were me, I probably would have taken initiative on the first turning point and moved up and taken that or secured that one room, because with move, you can just barely get onto the point, and with your into the breach dash, you're able to get it up there. So if I had initiative, or if I was Vet Guard, I would take initiative, I would move up and secure that room. And then if I'm going to open the door and try and get in that room, he had his grenade launcher there. He would have just been able to either crack my Flesh Screamer or blast just a whole bunch of dudes and really kind of mess things up on that side of the board.
Yeah, sounds like it was a good game.
It was a fantastic game.
Unfortunately for you, if we ever get matched up together, I now need to avenge myself on you since you beat Nick.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you. I'd love to play like some practice games. Just getting ready for Nova. I'm sure that you would like to play against Gellerpox with Brood Bros, and I really want to get a practice game in against Gellerpox as Gellerpox. Like, I don't want my first time playing a kill team mirror match to be in like a high intensity tournament setting.
Yeah, fair.
As unpleasant as it sounds to do so, I think I need that experience.
I think Gellerpox v Gellerpox is actually not the worst mirror match. It's not Mandrakes v Mandrakes. That's awful.
Yeah, that sounds pretty disgusting.
Yeah, I think I might actually kill myself during that.
Well, on that pleasant note.
Oh, what do you mean we're all hitting on 5s all the time?
All right, guys. Well, this was a dope episode. I really liked that team tournament talk. Any parting thoughts before we get out of here? I know we've got a really exciting episode lined up for next week. We're not going to spoil the surprise, but a little bit of a break, kind of like how this was a little bit of a break from the usual game recap format. But any final thoughts, guys?
Yeah, don't get frustrated playing against Mandrakes. That's their entire game plan. The team is designed to psychologically attack you, and in addition to playing kill team.
Don't take the bait, guys. Joe?
Titties.
Fade out.
Sorry, I completely zoned out.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Vox Screen. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Any of those things are going to help us grow. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.